Hey there guys, what's up? It's JP here and I'm back with another Hearthstone video, and today I'll be doing a meta analysis as well as a meta counter solution for you players out there that are a little bit struggling here. Personally, I am struggling a little bit on the ladder, but I am changing up my classes and stuff accordingly to what I face at the current moment. So we're going to talk about the three most common decks here in the meta at the moment. At least if you're playing from rank, maybe rank, I would say 17 to 12. I have not been playing as much as I like again here. I just basically ladder up one rank a day and then I'm done. So I'm making fairly decent progress here considering I skip a few days just to go out. So first up we have the Meta Mage deck, which is basically a mech mage. Now this deck is really aggressive. It's basically like a zoo deck, except it has Frostbolts, Unstable Portals, and Fireballs. Everything else is just meant to be very cost efficient. Of course, this is not the exact deck that everybody has here. Of course, everybody has a few tweaks here. Probably the biggest tweak that most of people have is not having mana worms and running things like maybe polymorphs and the good old Doctor Doctor Boom. Why is this not showing up here? Doctor okay here. Doctor Boom. Yeah, let's do it like this. Like that, right? This is another variation of the meta mage here. But at the very gist, that's it's meant to be a very zooey deck here. Some people run flame strikes as well, but that's irrelevant at this point. Um, that's one style. Next up, we have the meta handlock here. Now, handlock is probably the trickiest deck to counter, just because it's a really powerful deck. In terms of board control and stuff. Um, Although it does struggle a little bit against Hunter and a bit of Zoo depending on your draws, Handlock is still very, very prominent and still very, very powerful. There are a few variations, of course. You could run, you may not run Zombie Chows, you may run like the Earthen Rings here. Most of them do. Don't run the Zombie Chows. This is just a bit more tweaked version. Um, but the very gist of it is that you get a very big minion. You just remove clear board with things like all these. You know, you taunt up your watchers and stuff, and then you BGH, and then you Hellfires and Shadow Flames. There's so much strong removal. And then your late game is basically like Giants, Jiraxus, Doctor Boom, and then your opponent has no answers. So that's the gist of it. It's a really powerful deck, and the hardest deck to counter among all of these here. And then lastly, we have the Meta Zoo. Again, the Zoo deck everybody knows here. It's just a very aggressive deck. It tops up at 5 here. Now, one thing to note is that there are two variations of the Zoo at the current moment. One is the Enhanso Mechano deck, and the other one is the Sea Giant deck, which usually only runs on Sea Giant, so you don't have to worry too much here. Personally, I find the Enhanso one a little bit tougher to deal with. Uh, oh, Enhancer. Yep. So I personally find the Enhancer-matic one a little harder to deal with. So yeah, that's the gist of it here. Now here are some cards that people tend to overlook when playing against this kind of decks here. One thing to note here is that these decks are three very different, I would say different styles, but they have very different synergies here. The Meta Mage is basically banking on doing as much damage to you and then bursting you down with Frostbolts and Fireballs. The Handlock is just to outlast you in a straight game and then just burst you down with really big cards. And the Zoo is just to rush you down as fast as possible. Um, so here are some tweaks that you can make to any deck here. So we're just gonna take Warrior. And we're just going to talk about the neutral cards here because these are cards that are always available to everyone. So against most of these decks, the most powerful tool would be the Zombie Chow. Now Zombie Chow just puts an early board presence and it helps you trade with things like the early game Undertakers or like, um, what do you call it? That little gnome here, the clockwork gnome, as well as things like the leopard gnomes and other what other gnomes do we have here? The cog master. So yeah, the zombie chow is really strong here, and it can take out an unbuffed undertaker as well. Even if it's buffed once, it trades evenly for that. So something to take note of. Um, Another tech card is the Annoyatron. It does stall the game a little longer if you want to play a more defensive game, like if you're playing a control deck. Annoyatron is a very powerful alternative. Yeah, I wouldn't really run what do you call it, Thalnos. Though it can help with removal here. It does help a little bit in handlock, but I wouldn't recommend it here. Another card is the Doomsayer, which people tend to overlook a lot. Many times, in games, people are like, "Oh, if only I hit that piloted shredder and it gives me a Doomsayer, I would win, right?" Well, you can just put Doomsayer in your deck. That is an alternative as well. Um, Another one is the Explosive Sheep. Now, this tend to be controlled in placed in really control oriented decks here, but you can play it in any deck if you really want to, as long as you're not playing a very zooey deck that has a lot of small minions on the board here. Explosive Sheep is really powerful. Haunted Creeper as well helps trading with early drops a lot. Another tech card that you want to put is the Iron Beak Owl, and the Iron Beak Owl is more of a stall mechanic. Or rather, just because it's a silencer, it's a very tech heavy card because it stops things that tend to be really strong in most decks, like not Doctor Boom, but like Sylvanas and Twilight Drakes and stuff. Moving on here, we have cards like people have forgotten things like the Unstable Ghoul. Now, Unstable Ghoul is a mini pseudo Explosive Sheep here. Like, it makes no sense to run this over Explosive Sheep unless you're playing Control Warrior. Then you can go ahead and keep running these. I don't see why not here. Another tech card is the Wild Pyromancers. This tend to see more play in Priest. And for good reason. Priest does have a lot of low costing spells that they can use very well with the Pyromancer, and they can always heal it up so that it doesn't go away anytime soon. So that's another thing here. BGH is a common card that you see in all my decks just because Doctor Boom is a very serious threat. Um, un- Unless you're playing against the Hunter, or not Hunter, but Hunter or Zoo decks, you're probably gonna see Doctor Boom, and BGH is just like a straight off. Okay, here's your Doctor Boom. This is how I deal with it, right? Other cards include things like Earthen Ring Farseers, which just gives you more health. So as long as you're trading fairly evenly, uh, you tend to trade better as a control player. So as long as you can keep your health up, you tend to be doing really well. And the Earthen Ring kind of helps you push your health just a little bit out of range, a bit out of range here. Another tech card would be the Harvest Golem, which just trades very well. Uh, I wouldn't recommend Illuminator though. If you have a very trap heavy like mage deck, Illuminator is something that you could consider. And this is the one that I really want to talk about here. The Little Exorcist. This card is actually ridiculously strong against Zoo. Just because it has so many death battles here. And I'll just show you really quick here. Meta Zoo is the one that you tend to see the most here. And let me just show you how many death battles here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9 death battles. So if you really think about it here, um, the Little Exorcist is a huge tank, and it's usually going to take 1 or 2 of those with her. So you could consider running these cards as well. Another card that you could consider running is the good old Mind Control tech. Now, Mind Control tech is really strong against Mech Mage just because they tend to have the board control a lot easier than Zoo. So you can usually take a minion. And if you can't, it's a 3/3 body here. Another tech card would be the Shade of Naxxramas. Now these are cards that are just generally overlooked here because Shades, some people think, oh, it's just 3/3 for 3. But turn 4, it's a 4/4. So, or rather, the following turn is a 4/4, and then you can immediately start trading here. The idea of trying to beat aggro decks is to slow things down here. If you can't do that here, you can go ahead with the good old spider tank. Spider tank's just a little bit more durable as a base unit. And then, well, basically that's about it. Here, Defender of Argus has always been good, and things like Sun Fury Protectors, of course. Those are the taunters, but those are cards that you would consider as well. Iron Beak Owl I mentioned earlier. Alternatively, you could run the Spellbreaker if you want more damage. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the Antique Heal bot here. These tend to see play in a lot of decks nowadays just because of the Restore 8 health. And the Restore 8 health is a big deal here. Um, Especially in things like Handlock where you're always tapping away and chipping away at your own health. Antique Heal bot tends to will help you prolong the game as far as possible here. Alright, so the another card that we're going to talk about here is the Abomination. Now, Abomination is a really powerful taunt. Together with the Senjin Chill Master, of course, how could I have skipped this here? Senjin here. Senjin's just a solid taunter. But the Abomination is a really curious one because it can get rid of Death Rattle effects in a pseudo kind of way. Uh, of course, it's going to be really terrible against things like Nerubian eggs and stuff, but if you can get the egg to pop and then you run this into the Ruby, there's a good chance it's gonna wipe out the board. And of course, there are some tech cards like Bound Over and stuff, but those are not nearly as important here. Sludge Belchers are must in most decks nowadays, especially if you tend to play the control game. So yeah, those are the cards that you really want here. I'm gonna make a control warrior for you guys to see how I would go ahead and make it here. Now this is standard-ish control warrior, okay? It's gonna be a really pricey here deck to make, especially if you want the old golden one like mine, but I'm just gonna show you how I make it. Most people run 2 shield maidens. You can go ahead and do that and don't run the Iron Juggernaut. You know what? Yeah, let's just show you how you should probably make it. Yeah, mine is just a bit more of a odd variant. And in case you guys are wondering, yes, the Control Warrior is still very relevant in the current meta. It is by far the most consistent deck that you can throw out there. Handlock gets murdered by aggro, but Control Warrior doesn't necessarily have to be. Just because they got, I wouldn't say it's a better removal, but more practical removal. And I seem to be a bit lost here. Yeah, Harvison's in there. Little taps in there. Sylvanas is in here. Baron, Boom, Alexstrasza. I seem to be missing a card here. Let me just take a quick gander. You know what? I have no idea what is missing here actually. Ah, Brawl. No, Brawl is already in here. What am I thinking? Yeah, well, I have no idea. So we can just go ahead and throw in a second Whirlwind here. If you don't want the Whirlwind, I guess I would go ahead with the good old Senjin Shield Master here. I'm not sure how to spell Senjin. So we're gonna just manually look for him. Senjin. Like that. So yeah, that's how I would make a Control Warrior. If you don't like the Senjin, you can run things like the Pilot the Shredder just for a bit more tempo here. But I think the Senjin is better. I could be wrong though. So yeah, this is how you make it here. Alternatively, you could run. Now I know what's missing. It's because it's such an odd choice that even I overlooked it here, and that's the Iron Beak Owl. This is how I make Control Warrior. Well, -1 Shield Maiden, +1 Iron Juggernaut. But this is how you should be making a Control Warrior, just because it's very techy. It's really, really strong against all 3 of the of the above mentioned here. The one that it might struggle against is a Paladin style deck. But let me just go ahead and explain why here. Paladin as a class here is always going to beat the control matchup just because it has equality and consecrate. Now the equality consecrate is the most powerful combo of board clear just because it wipes out an entire board regardless. Unless it has death rattle and then summon a minion, it's going to wipe out the board. Also, another reason why here is because the hero power of the paladin. Let me see if we can pull it out here somehow. Okay, we can't. So let me just go and create one paladin deck here. We're gonna leave this alone. I didn't mean to do that here, but let's just let it filter. So the hero power of the paladin is to summon a 1/1 silver hand recruit here. So the playstyle that you generally see paladins play against control warrior is to just keep using your hero power and stalling the game, right? You just try to trade as best as you can against all the control warriors minions with things like equality and stuff. And then your late game is basically your hero power, and then the hero power trades better against the warriors gain 2 armor because in the fatigue war you're doing more damage as opposed to trying to turtle back. Also, there are very tacky cards here like the Master for Battle and the what's it called, Quartermaster, that makes the 1/1 recruits 3/3s, which is an amazing amount of burst here that usually catches warrior off guard. So yeah, that's just that for this video, guys. Do feel free to leave a comment here on how, if you guys need any advice or tips on how to go past the current meta. Of course, right now the meta I'm talking about is, as you can tell, I'm still like rank 12, and I am climbing. And this is actually on a winning streak, rank 12. So it's like from rank 18 to rank 12, where you see a lot of these decks. So if you are looking to break past that barrier or to keep climbing up that range, go ahead and leave me a comment here, and I'll teach you how, depending on what you see. So yeah, that's all. That's all for me for this video, guys. This is JP signing out.